Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. As I always say, lots of things happening this week, but this week more than ever, both with regard to a Freedom Watch case involving COVID-19. I'll get into that, as well as what's going on generally in the world with regard to Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and the rest of the individuals who are trying to become the next president of the United States, whoever they may be, including John F. Kennedy Jr. Apparently, the Democrats just filed an ethics complaint against him with the FEC, Federal Election Commission. So much for honor among thieves, although I happen to like John F. Kennedy Jr. He's his own man. I don't agree on everything, but I like the fact that he stands up for what he believes in. I've had him on the show before, by the way. But let's talk about what's happening this week. Of course, the recommendation, or the report rather, of special counsel with regard to Biden's having taken classified documents from his vice presidential mansion and from the White House and from the administration over 40 years. Biden thinks he's exonerated. He wasn't exonerated, of course. In fact, the special counsel found that he has no memory, that in effect, he's a zombie. He can't remember the date his son died. He can't remember the dates that he was vice president. He can't remember anything. And of course, that's extremely damaging. Now, I believe, and I'm one of the few that said this initially, also Ramaswamy, or however his name is pronounced, I saw him last night saying the same thing, is that it now appears that things have flipped. The Republicans would like Biden to stay in office. That's why they're not seeking to impeach him. That's why it's basically just a dog and pony show on Capitol Hill with regard to the bribery from communist China, Ukraine, and Russia. Of course, you know, we convicted Biden of that here at Judicial Watch, Freedom Watch, Freudian slip, because I do today what I used to do at Judicial Watch. And we also had him sentenced to 20 years in prison. But the Democrats now want him out. Now, this special counsel is working under the authority of the corrupt Attorney General, Merrick Garland, of the U.S. Justice Department. So by saying that he has no memory, that he can't function, that he's not even fit to be tried, not that he isn't guilty. In fact, that report said that he intentionally withheld classified documents. It looks like the Democrats are laying the groundwork to get rid of Biden. And Ramaswamy agreed with me on that, as I said. I think anybody who has any degree of common sense can figure that one out. Now, who is likely to be the presidential candidate? It would be either Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom, and perhaps running on the same ticket. That makes it much more difficult for President Trump to win in November. So stay tuned. Let's see what happens here. But I predicted that Biden probably would pass away of his own natural causes by the time of the November election. Now it appears that the Democrats are making a full court press to get rid of him now. He's a true reliability. In fact, when he did a press conference the other day, he again made another gaffe. Earlier in the week, he was telling everybody that he had just spoken with François Mitterrand, the president of France, who died in the 1980s. Then he said he had spoken with Helmut Kohl, the chancellor of Germany, who died in 2017. And yesterday he said that he was instrumental in helping refugees from Gaza leave Gaza and go to Mexico. Oh my God. You can laugh, it's not funny. But this is exactly what we're dealing with as president, and there's no way that the Democrats are going to leave him in office. So that's that issue. Then, of course, if you want to laugh some more, because either you laugh or you cry, there's what happened at the Supreme Court on Thursday, when Trump's lawyers appeared to argue that the decision by the Colorado Supreme Court had to be overturned, that it was violative of the Constitution. This is a decision that denied President Trump the right to run for president in Colorado, claiming that he's an insurrectionist. So the leftist Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who I've appeared in front of more than once, not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer, an affirmative action judge, in effect, says to Trump's lawyer, well, is Trump an insurrectionist? And the lawyer comes back and says, oh no, this wasn't insurrection. It was just simply a criminal riot. Now, with lawyers like that, who needs enemies? I mean, this is unbelievable. So I literally fell off my chair laughing. Now, Trump's going to win anyway, because the Democrat leftist justices on the Supreme Court don't want to create a precedent that could come back and bite a Democrat candidate. Anyway, stay tuned for that one. It was the Rocky Horror Picture Show with Trump's lawyers. You know, he's always had a tendency. I actually like Alina Abba. Okay, I think she's a sharp person. She's been attacked unfairly. She's been courageous. But the rest of his lawyers have been a bunch of clowns. In the early days, he used to pick them off of Fox News. Whoever he saw there, that was his lawyer. I don't know where he's getting them these days, but he's better do a better job, because a lot of things are on the horizon for him, very serious things that could derail his running for president. I don't think they will at this point. I think things will be delayed, but I think he needs better legal counsel. And then there's something that happened which is extremely fascinating and unbelievable. About 2 years ago, on behalf of a company called Buzz Photos in Dallas, Texas, Freedom Watch filed a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit, against the Wuhan lab in China. It's a military lab, and the government of China. We sought to serve it through the clerk of the court, the federal court in Dallas, by DHL and by Federal Express. It was rejected by Chinese authorities in Beijing and in Wuhan. We then went back to the US State Department, and we sought to serve it through diplomatic channels. And it was recently served along with a complaint that had been filed by the state of Mississippi, which copied our complaint. And we're seeking damages for all the people that died, for the people that have been harmed, people that have lost money, going out of business, like our client Buzz Photo. And it's a very important case. Well, the complaint arrives with the government of China, in China, and they reject it. They say, we're not going to accept it. They thumb their nose at the US Department of State. But at the same time, they have a letter written. It's probably written by a big law firm in Washington, D.C. that they retain, one that obviously isn't terribly loyal to the United States. And they write this very, very arrogant and belligerent letter saying that they don't recognize the US legal system in effect, that they have sovereign immunity, that if this case proceeds, that it's frivolous, that there will be countermeasures taken. What does that mean? Does that mean they're going to kill me? Or does that mean they're going to do a number on the people that brought it from Mississippi? Does that mean there's economic sanctions? What does that mean? Countermeasures. But here's the real kicker, is that the Biden State Department, which received this letter, forwarded it on to the judge in Dallas to influence the judge to try to get him to dismiss the case. I'm going to put this up on our website because I want you to read it at freedomwatchusa.org. Ask yourself this question. Is the Biden State Department, run by this another clown, Anthony Blinken, a member of the Marxian Jewish left, I'm sorry to say, as a Jewish Christian, it's an embarrassment to the Jewish people, are they doing the bidding of communist China for Biden? Is it because he was bribed by China? Now he's an advocate against the people of the United States, that they can't get compensation from the Wuhan lab and from China for what happened in COVID-19? These are questions that need to be asked. And these are questions which are very, very important. And I would hazard a guess that that's in fact exactly what's happening here, is that Biden is paying back China through his State Department and his Gestapo of a Justice Department that submitted the letter for China to the judge in Dallas, Texas. Unbelievable. Then this week, and we're going to have Sheriff Joe Arpaio on, who's of course America's sheriff. We have formed a nonprofit called America's Sheriff, and you can see it at americassheriff.org on the website. We're going to talk about the immigration situation. The Republicans, as usual, the gang that can't shoot straight. First, Senate Republicans, rhinos led by Mitch McConnell, agreed to a bill that would give Biden an argument that he's doing something about the massive influx of illegal immigrants on our southern border. They checkmate the House of Representatives, that then says, oh, we're not going to accept this. And they were correct in not accepting it and not wanting to vote on it, because it will allow 2 million more illegal aliens into this country just in the next year. And there are other provisions which also are completely out of control. In fact, Biden has the ability to do exactly what Trump does, or did, and shut the border down and build a wall. So this would provide cover for Biden going into the election, or whoever is running on behalf of the Democrat Party at this point. Then the Republicans call a vote to try to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, doesn't bother counting the votes. He calls an impeachment vote on the House of Representatives, and the Republicans lose. So they've had egg on their face now with regard to this immigration. It was an absolute disaster, almost as much of a disaster as the special counsel's report for Biden, which called him mentally incompetent and created a situation where now the entire country doesn't think he's capable of being president anymore. So these are our two political parties. Not only are they corrupt, not only are they compromised, but they're also incompetent. And as we stand on the verge, and I believe we're already in World War III, of a potential nuclear holocaust, these are the people that are running this country. And it is why our Third Continental Congress is deliberating to declare independence, to form a new government and not a new nation, fine-tune the Constitution in certain ways, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. But it is why, frankly, we, the American people, need to rise up and do it for ourselves. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and contribute to our cause with tax-deductible contributions. We are your advocates. You have none in our so-called government. I'll be right back. Stay tuned. Until then, go to freedomwatchusa.org. I'm back, and I want to talk about J6 because that's tied into what was going on at the Supreme Court last Thursday. Obviously, there's been a tremendous propaganda that the peaceful protesters of January 6th were insurrectionists. They were not insurrectionists. They were people who were protesting overwhelmingly peacefully. They rose up. It's something which Jefferson predicted would happen every 20 years or so. I've sent out earlier this week in podcasts the little clip from the Broadway show and movie Les Miserables, the French. It was about the rebellion of 1832 in France, where the people rose up, because even after the French Revolution, things weren't going that well, frankly. And it looked a lot like that. People waving flags going into the Capitol, people walking in peacefully, generally speaking, sometimes even Capitol Police escorting the J6 prosecutors. But the atmosphere in Washington, D.C. has become so negative, so hateful towards these J6 prosecutors. And on top of everything else, our so-called Justice Department, through its Gestapo and FBI, is fanning out to arrest anyone who had anything to do with January 6th. Even those people that just spoke to people that were at the Capitol by cell phone are being arrested and charged with misdemeanors as supporting a, quote, insurrection. Well, it was no insurrection, and it was a protest. And if we, the American people, cannot protest, and if we cannot rise up, and if conservatives and people of faith and those who believe in the vision and creation of our founding fathers can't, be very vocal and forceful, then the only alternative that you're left with is a bloody revolution. And that's what's extremely scary. And we know straight across the board that nearly every institution in our so-called government, I call it so-called because I don't recognize it, in our so-called government is trying to quash dissent, trying to quash free speech. And here we have a Republican Party that can't shoot straight. So as I said during the earlier segment, it's time to rise up. It's time for the American people to themselves take peaceful and legal action. And at Freedom Watch, we have our citizens' grand juries, our citizen trials, our citizens' convictions and sentencing with citizens' judges and juries. And I want you to join us, and you have to join us if you care about your kids, grandkids, or future generations, or if you care about yourselves, if you're young or middle-aged. You have to get up off the couch. You have to do some work now. You have to actually think about the future, because we are sinking fast. And the fact of the matter remains that if the Democrats remove Joe Biden from office, and it looks like they're now going to do it, they could very well come up with a candidate that could beat Donald Trump. You cannot count on him to be our political messiah. Unfortunately, not you, our listeners, and not people that support Freedom Watch or Radio America, but most people in this country vote on how someone looks, very superficially. That's how we wound up, with Biden. That's how we wound up with Clinton. That's how we wound up with Obama. You can't do that. And it's very likely that someone like Gavin Newsom with maybe Michelle running as vice president, they're going to have a black woman if they're going to move Kamala Harris out of the way, or they'll have a complete revolt. It's very likely that that person could actually win. So this is why we need to be doing stuff now. We can't wait for November with the hope that President Trump will win. And of course, I don't endorse anyone as head of Freedom Watch. You can figure out who I would vote for, but I don't tell you who to vote for because I can't. We're a public interest group. But the fact is, what I can tell you is that it's time to rise up, that it's time to do something. We need your support at Freedom Watch. The Republicans have siphoned off a lot of our contributions. We're not doing all that well. And we need your financial support badly to continue what we're doing because we're unafraid. We will do what needs to be done, and we need you to join us. So please go to freedomwatchusa.org. And I want you to listen carefully to Joe Arpaio, Sheriff Arpaio, America's Sheriff, who's coming on next. This is someone who stuck his neck out, who was vilified, who was unjustly found to have committed criminal contempt, which was false. It was a misdemeanor. President Trump pardoned him with regard to his efforts to eliminate illegal immigration in Maricopa County. And he took risks. And we, the American people, need to take risks if you want to have a country much longer. Our founding fathers took risks. They risked their lives, pledged their fortunes and sacred honor to form a new nation. So listen carefully to what Sheriff Arpaio has to say, because he's over 90 years old right now. He's about 92, and he's still chugging along like the Energizer Bunny. And you need to do the same, even though you're younger, because we need everybody to pitch in and do what they need to do to save this country. I'll be right back. We're back with my friend, my colleague, my hero, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, known as Sheriff a long time. We founded a group called America's Sheriff. You can see it at americascheriff.com. That's very important because we seek to protect the police, like the police in New York City that were attacked by the illegal immigrants a few weeks ago, who then fled for California after the DA, Alvin Bragg, the same one that's persecuting President Trump, let them go free. So I wanted to bring the sheriff on today. And Sheriff, I'm using you an example to our listeners and patriots and people of faith and those who believe in the vision and creation of our founding fathers, that we have to take risks. You've never been afraid to take risks. You've never been afraid to do what you think is right, regardless of evil judges and everybody else that are out there that tried to tear you down, as sometimes they've tried to tear me down. And, as they tried to tear our founding fathers down, as a matter of fact, the judges of King George III. But we persevered on, and you've been persevering on, and you're an Energizer Bunny. So give us your assessment of what you think is going on with regard to illegal immigration today, what Republicans tried to accomplish but didn't accomplish in the last week or so on Capitol Hill, and what we need to do going forward.
Well, thanks for those fine comments, Larry. I always ad lib. I speak from the heart, and I don't prepare. So when I do talk to you, the audience should know that I am just speaking out. I don't have written notes and, that type of thing like you do. No, not like you do, because you're very, very good in speaking out. Of course, you're an attorney. I am not, but you're not bashful to speak out and tell it like it is. So we're kind of following the same highway together, and it's been a rough road, but we're going to survive. Illegal immigration, you want me to talk about it? You're going to need about 5 hours on a show.
Well, I want you to talk about, what's going on with regard to the Republican Party. I mean, this week, in the Senate, they tried to cave in to Biden's phony immigration bill. Then they called an impeachment of Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas. They didn't have the votes. They fell on their face. What do we need to do to stem the tide of this illegal immigration, particularly since it now appears the Democrats are going to move Biden out, thanks to the special counsel report that said he's mentally incompetent. And we're going to face the potential of another Biden clone as president of the United States. God forbid, but it could happen. Biden was the weakest candidate. The Republicans want to run against him, but it looks like they're not going to be able to run against him. And I'm not advocating voting one way or the other. But what do we do? Where are we today with all these hordes of people running across the border? Drug traffickers, human traffickers, sex traffickers, terrorists. What do we do?
Well, first of all, I go way back, and I'm rather amused when I first started going after the illegals around 19, about 30 years ago. Although I was head of the DEA in Texas, Mexico, and talking about now as sheriff for 24 years. So I'm amused because every time I used to raid a business here, lock up the illegals on the street for being here illegally, I get criticized, and all the politicians, you know what they say? Let's close the border first, and then we'll work up into the interior. They know the border will never be closed the way it's been going. So they cop out. They don't like coming into our country, locking up illegal aliens on the streets, in the workplace. And by the way, nobody is doing it now. Name anyone from ICE down to sheriffs, anyone. Nobody's making arrests. So you talk about an open border. We sure have it above and beyond other reasons, political and otherwise. Why isn't anyone enforcing the laws today? Now, I'm a little frustrated because I'll tell you what, when I was a director in Mexico, South America, I had the military helping me in Mexico, the U.S. military, not just at the border, in the interior. And everybody says we can't send the military over there. The Mexican president don't come into my country, on and on. So my halfway mark to meet these people, send the military across the border to join the Mexican military or cops, work together at the border like we do in all these foreign countries. In fact, these countries, we don't even stick with the border. We go deep into the interior of the country. So why can't we have our military working with their military? But no, it never happens. All these politicians, it's all political. I'm talking about Republicans too. Why don't they get some loyalty and character, and do the right thing? I'm not just blaming the Democrats. I want the Republicans to stop playing games behind when they go behind the door. All the senators, yeah, they're going behind the doors. They're drinking beer. They already make their deals, and then they come out and face the media. So we got a trouble in Washington with the politicians on both sides of the fence.
Well, that's right. And you, when you actually sought to enforce the laws in Arizona, were castigated for that. You wound up in contempt proceedings. I was there observing and trying to do whatever I could with a very evil judge, Murray Snow, at the time. And he thought he was like Mussolini. He would stand up as if he was giving some kind of speech in Rome, Italy. And you were persecuted for it. And you were doing exactly what Governor Abbott is correctly doing today in Texas, protecting the state of Arizona as he's finally decided to protect the state of Texas. Now, I'm disappointed that he didn't do this sooner. I don't know why he dilly-dallied about it other than wanting to play politics with the issue. But what I think Texas is doing now is a good idea. And I'm very, very gratified that they basically told the Supreme Court to take a hike, is that we have rights in Texas ourselves, and we're going to protect our citizens. And you can't tell us that we have to remove the barbed wire that we put up on the border to keep the immigrants out. What do you think about what Abbott's been doing recently in his clash with the Supreme Court?
Well, which issue are you talking about? We've so many.
Well, I'm saying that I'm equating what he's doing, which is to use the state of Texas to enforce illegal immigration, to arrest these people with what you did in Maricopa County, for which you were so persecuted.
Yeah, well, I don't think it should even go to Supreme Court. The laws are there. And I don't know about Texas. I'm a big fan of Texas. I covered Texas when I was with the DEA. However, you got the Florida governor, and I think Texas bragging that they're now going to allow their law enforcement to enforce the illegal immigration laws in the state. We've been doing that for years. We have 2 state laws that I relied on doing exactly that. So unfortunately, some politicians make it look like it's a new thing, but that's all right as long as they do it. But where have they been? Where have they been?
Yeah, in
Maybe
many,
a lot of
you
the
know, a
what?
large part of the damage has already occurred, Sheriff. And yeah, where have they been? What they've been doing is playing politics. You know, they weren't interested in solving the question. They wanted to actually see the political effect of having all these illegal aliens come into the country. And then finally, when it got so bad, they exercised the powers that they had in the first place. Kind of reminds me of the Wizard of Oz, when the good witch of the East says, "Dorothy, you could have always come back for Oz." These people
You
could
and
have
I
done this.
talking about this. We're not magicians. We're just using common sense and wisdom. By the way, I don't even use the word experience. Experience could be bad too, you know. Everybody says we got experience here, we got experience at the border. Everybody's experience. It could be bad. I use the word wisdom. I don't use experience anymore. And also the media. Now, I have relatives that work for the media. The media is the most critical element when you're talking about politics. Once the media gets on something, boy, all the politicians hop on a wagon and then they start saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So the media is the cause, but it could be good. Sometimes it gets people off their you know what because they don't like bad publicity. So they start changing and say they're doing this and they're doing that because of the media. Now, I was at the border last week endorsing a nice lady from Michigan for Congress. And I was at the border. Between you and I was so surprised. I was in the Nogales. You couldn't find anybody on the streets. So I'm wondering where all these illegals are going. I guess is another part of the state. They're flooding in here. That's for sure. But what bothers me, Larry, the bottom line, other than the fact a lot of them come over here and now they're forming gangs, killing gangs and all that, and burglarizing everybody's homes. That's just the start of this crime. This is going to continue on if nobody's locking anybody up. I want to know why no one is locking anybody up in this country. Forget the border. As they come in here, why? And by the way, Larry, you know, I don't know what illegal alien means anymore because everybody says migrant. Everybody. Why don't they say some are illegal aliens, illegally here? You can't tell the difference, and they do that purposely. The politicians and the media use that cover, that word, migrants. They don't say illegal aliens. Nobody says it anymore. So I don't know how you can figure that one out. I know why they're trying to hide it. The media is trying to hide it. The politicians are trying to hide it. And we're all suffering because of it.
Well, we've seen the effects of it. And now we're having the Democrat cities collapse under their own weight. People are getting more benefits if they're an illegal alien than they are if an American citizen. Taxpayers are paying for it. Taxpayers can't afford gasoline. They can't afford food. They can't afford virtually anything, certainly not to buy a house anymore with the price of housing. And the country is collapsing under its own weight. And I believe this was a plan by the left to destroy this country, to take it down to ground zero, part of a multi-part plan. They used the Justice Department like a Gestapo to quell all dissent. You know, dissent, and you're an insurrectionist, and we're going to arrest you. And you know, we're also destroying morale in the military with what's going on in the Middle East now. We're sitting ducks over there. The country's on the verge of collapse, and both parties, one plays games, the Republican, and the other, the Democrat, is pure evil. They want to destroy the country, but they have one thing in common: they like to raise money, and they want it from the American people who don't even have the money. But Sheriff,
Well,
yeah, go ahead. You got 2 minutes.
You wrote a letter. You wrote a press release a few days ago, and you were smart enough to put in there about those cops that were brutally beaten by, you said, migrant mob. Okay, that's a technical point, but you said they were here illegally after you used migrant. You said that. And you said, why isn't someone doing anything? Why did they let these guys out on bond? Maybe somebody read your press release, because right after that, they did file charges at that New York so-called district attorney. They did file charges, and guess what? Where do you think they arrested them? Here in Phoenix. They were fleeing New York and stopped off in Phoenix, and ICE grabbed them. So sometimes the media does help and get the district attorneys off their butt. You said they gave the finger. You know, and you're right. They're all giving us the fingers, these district attorneys and politicians. But they were arrested. But why weren't they arrested before it hit the press? Once they hit all the press, once again, the district attorney, oh, we better do something. I'm getting bad press. Maybe they're going to try to recall me. So he finally indicted them. Think of that. That happens
Yeah, I
every
did. I did. And Sharp, hang in there for maybe 2 minutes in the next segment if you can, and then I'll wrap it up. But I want people to know, where they can reach you. You're running for mayor in your hometown. You never quit. And also, I'm going to say a little bit about what's been going on with regard to you being threatened by a Mexican politician. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with the verdict section of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. I'm back with Sheriff Joe Arpaio, America's Sheriff, co-founder with yours truly of americasheriff.org. Go to americasheriff.org and see what we do. We've been successfully defending cops in Philadelphia, and we're here to help law enforcement. Sheriff, we'll be brief here because I know you got to run, but you were threatened by a Mexican politician. You were told publicly that you were a murderer, that you were running guns to Mexico. He refused to apologize. He was running for president at the time. We asked the State Department for help. We asked Sullivan in the White House, National Security Advisor, for help. None was coming. We brought a lawsuit, which is going through the courts right now against him for defamation. Tell us a little bit about that in a minute or so, and tell people where you can be reached. But see, you continue to fight, and the American people need to continue to fight, and we can never give up.
Well, first of all, you know me, Larry. I tell it like it is, and I've had a lot of threats, but the threats are not going to stop me from doing my duty. And I probably you as my legal lawyers probably will say, "Oh, don't keep talking about the threats and all that." No, I'm going to talk about the threats because I'm still going to do my duty. Doesn't matter how I'm threatened. They're not going to stop me. I don't like this one. I'm not worried about threats. And you're not going to like that, Larry, either. But I really don't worry about it. If they're going to get me, they're going to get me. But I want justice. This is difficult for me now because this guy made all those remarks. He isn't a bum. He's a top Mexican official, and I would believe him. And he's getting by with it. All I asked was an apology. Give me an apology. I asked Cinema. I asked a few other people. I wrote letters. You did, Biggs, Congressman Biggs. I want a apology. But now you had us sue, go down to Florida, which is a good move, by the way, to get this guy. Now we're trying to serve him. You know that. He's hiding. What is he, hiding in Mexico?
Yeah, he is. And we're serving him through the State Department like we just served China, and China refused acceptance, but he's going to have to get it. But the moral to the story is these people need to be held accountable. His comments have risked your life, caused you to be threatened. You're just simply trying to do your job. You're not a murderer, and you don't run guns to Mexico. And this cheap politician to get votes in Mexico is making these statements. And it tells you something about the government of Mexico, which is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, maybe number one, as a matter of fact. And you stand up to these people, Sheriff. So, and we're doing it in the courts.
Yeah, you forget one thing. I was a regional director in Mexico, and I had problems with corruption, but I got along thanks to blueberry pie and whiskey I gave to the Attorney General. But I receive awards from the Mexican government. congressional awards for working with them. And I did work with them. I know they were corrupt, but they never screwed up any of my cases. So
Well,
again,
you had that ability. You were like Ronald Reagan. You were able to communicate with people, which is excellent. Tell us where people can reach you. You're running for mayor today, and communicate with you. And of course, you know, you're a close friend of President Trump as well.
well, 602-924-0001. They can get me anytime, anywhere. And when you're successful on this lawsuit, and I think I told you, I can't tell you what to do, you're my lawyer, but I am not going to accept any apology unless I face him face to face. That's it. And I think I told you that. So if he wants to meet with me and apologize, I'll be glad to go to Mexico City and meet him, and he can apologize to me.
You are a real gentleman. He is not sheriff, but I want to wrap it up. I got a minute just to say that we all need to be like Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Is that if we're going to save this country, we cannot be afraid. We must do what we need to do. We don't have to worry about, you know, what happens to us. God is behind us, and we will be taken care of as our founding fathers were, with the divine providence of the Father and Son. So I want to thank you, Sheriff. Please go to freedomwatchusa.org. Listeners and supporters, support us. We're doing some very valuable things. We all need to hang together. We're together, as Benjamin Franklin said, or separately, as Benjamin Franklin said, we will hang. Now is the time to pull together and to be like Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Thank you, my good friend. God bless you. We'll bring you back, and stay safe. And thank you, listeners, for listening to us, because we need your support badly at this time.
Thank you.